The hour of 9 o'clock having arrived, I'd like to call the Executive Committee Wednesday, August 5th meeting to order. Clerk, call the roll.
Allen. Braz. Hanson.
Here.
Boscheit.
Here.
Iqbal.
Here.
Kenyon.
Here.
Leonard.
Here.
Lewis. Martin.
Here.
Sanchez.
Here.
Shefflo. Surges.
Here.
Thomas. Weber.
Here.
Wonicky. Okay, you have a quorum.
Okay, we have a quorum. I'm going to ask Joe Onsick if you'd come forward to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty.
and justice for all. Okay, thank you, Joe. May I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from July 8th and July 10th meetings? So moved by Dr. Iqbal, second by Ms. Wonicky. Are there any adjustments, comments, changes? Seeing none. Any from those participating on the telephone? Hearing none. Clerk, call the roll.
Allen. Braz. Hanson.
Yes.
Boscheit.
Yes.
Iqbal.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Leonard.
Yes.
Lewis. Martin.
Yes.
Sanchez.
Yes.
Shefflo. Surges. Thomas. Weber.
Yes.
Wonicky. Yes.
Okay, the minutes are approved. Public comment, are there any public comments from those in person? Seeing none. Anybody on the phone? Hearing none. We'll go to the next, let's see, monthly financial review. Joe Onsick.
Okay, good morning. I think I need the clicker.
Joe, I've got it. I'm going to drive from up here.
Okay. For the monthly financial report, in addition to the general budget performance reports that are included in your packet, I did prepare this PowerPoint presentation that kind of gives you a snapshot of where we're at with the 2021 budget. Overall, and this is just focused on the general fund right now, because this is the one that we have, it's the responsibility of the committee and the board to balance this. All the other special revenue funds budgets are balanced. Total revenue in comparison to last year is almost $10 million less than what we had budgeted last year, and expenditures are about $5,000 more. So that is how we arrive at a budget gap of almost $15 million. Next slide. Okay. Now, what I have done for you is I've presented this by department. So we start with the revenues first. The shaded out areas are the departments that have not yet presented their budgets. So I didn't think it was really fair to give a preview of their budget since we're still working with them and they're still under review. So I left those blank. But the total does reflect what is in the system as of now. But you can kind of start to see that most of the revenue variance lies within the general government revenue. And that line item is what contains property tax revenue, sales tax revenue, state income tax revenue. So those are the most economically sensitive revenues. There is a shift in property tax revenue, which I'll detail out a little bit further in another slide. But this is the revenue side by department. Now we start into the expenditure side. There's two slides here. The same thing, the grayed out areas are for the departments that have not yet presented their budgets. So you can see that the changes are not that dramatic on this slide can move on to the next one. And then we have the remaining of the departments and offices that have already presented their budgets. You can see that the variances that are there, and that leads to the total $5,066,000 increase in expenditures compared to last year. This next slide then is revenues net expenditures. So it'll basically be the same for all those departments that do not have any revenue, but if they do have revenue, you'll see the impact of the change in their revenue as well in this slide. And you can go on to the next one. And so this is how we end up at the $14.9 million, nearly $15 million revenue gap. The next slide kind of, it's a little bit, I'm sorry if it's a little bit too small to read, but this outlines for you some of the major expenditure and revenue variances that are contributing to that gap. So a good portion of the revenue variance, 5.3 million, has to do with the decrease in revenues that are affected by the economic impact of COVID-19 that are forecasted to carry through to 2021. Then I did not yet include any type of a drawdown from the property tax freeze protection fund. So that 2.66 million that you see there that was drawn down last year, there's no drawdown this year yet. There's approximately, I think, $2.8 million in the fund. So we could draw that down, but I usually leave that towards the end when we're trying to balance. There is an increase of 1.7 million in overall contractual services. Then we have the shift of property tax revenue to the insurance liability fund. Most of that has to do with the increase in the insurance liability premium that we experienced last year of just approximately $1 million. There's a $1.2 million increase in commodities. Last year we had $816,000 of budget reductions that were not allocated to specific line items. This year, there isn't anything on that line item yet, and so that accounts for $816,000 of that difference. There's an increase of almost $600,000 in employee benefits. There's a shift of about $467,000 to the IMRF fund to help fund the increase in the IMRF rate, as well as the increase that's caused by the salary increases. Then we have the increase in salaries and wages. This is a net increase, so this reflects some additional staff in some departments, some reduction in staff in other departments, and then the overall average 2% increase that was built into next year's budget. This year, I just had the 300, the absence of drawdown of biennial election reserve. What this refers to is in 2020, the year we currently are in, we drew down $315,000 that we had set aside the previous year to help offset the cost of the biennial election. Well, next year there is no biennial election, so we're not drawing down that $315,000 next year, so that accounts for a portion of the difference. Then we have a decrease in electronic monitoring fees, a decrease in riverboat grant revenue to the general fund. We're bringing the contingency back up to the $1,050,000. So that $180,000 represents the amount of contingency we've used so far in 2020 and what we need to add back into it to bring it up to the same level for next year. Then we have the shift of property tax revenue going into the FICA fund. And again, this is to offset the increase in salaries and wages and the FICA tax that's associated with it. The debt service, this has to do with that bond refinancing that we did in 2013, and we use state income tax revenue to pay that debt service. So for 2021, we need $91,000 more of the state income tax revenue to pay for the debt, and that's all was built into a schedule that was established when we issued the bonds. Then we have the 5% share of the county's CANCOM fees, and this would be the increase in the fees. And this has to do with the sheriff's area primarily, and I believe court services, and I think emergency management is the third area. And then to offset all of these reductions in revenues, we did see about a $12,000 increase net in miscellaneous revenues, a $222,000 increase in recording fees, and then we built in a property tax revenue increase. It's that $558,000 represents an expected increase of $545,000 plus the extra $13,000 that we were able to bring in this past year added to that. So that brings you down to the total of $14.9 million gap. And as we proceed through this next month, we'll be looking at more of the details that are behind all of these figures to see what we can do to bring those figures down. So that's all I have for you regarding the finances. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, are there any questions for Mr. Onsick? Mr. Surges?
Just a statement. We had a meeting last Wednesday, Thursday with Michael Baker and Sylvia and I to look at the health insurance costs, having heard and listened to the preliminary expectation of 2.5% increase. And since we locked into an 18-month versus a 12-month contract, we might not need that whole 2.5%. And I asked Mike to firm up some numbers and get back with you, just for what it's worth. I don't know if that made it to you. But
Not yet, but I know I'm behind in my emails. It could be in there.
appreciate everything you do, Joe.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Dr. Iqbal?
Yeah, my question is, the CARES Act, we may be getting some money from the CARES Act for the county. The question is, had that been incorporated in these numbers? Is it after we get something, or we expect to get and balance it out?
Well, this is for next year, and so there's nothing expected to come next year from the CARES Act, at least not that I'm aware of, or at least not that we're confident enough to build into the budget. So this is for next year, that there's nothing there. The only way it would affect next year would be if we did receive something this year that offsets some of our expenses that caused us to have savings that we might be able to set aside for next year. But we don't know what that amount will be yet, or if there would be an amount like that yet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Other comments or questions? Seeing none, any from anybody on the phone? Hearing none, thank you very much, Mr. Onsick. Okay, putting together the consent agenda for next Tuesday morning. County Development, John Martin, I believe that you'd like to present and move 2 items.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have 2 items, both of which I move at this time. And
So moved by Mr. Martin, second by Mr. Sanchez. Mr. Martin.
the first is the initiation of a demolition of property commonly known as 15 North 848 Meadows in Rutland Township. And the second is the final adjustment in engineering fees for the Settlers Hill Cross Country course.
Okay, any questions or comments? Seeing none, any from the phone? Do we have, who do we have attending this morning on the phone?
So we have Susan Sterrett, Chris Caius, Myrna Molina, Teresa Barrero, and Auditor Terry Hunt is with us.
Okay, thank you. Okay, seeing and hearing no comments, it's been moved and seconded. Clerk, call the roll.
Allen.
Aye.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Hoshite.
Yes.
Iqbal.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Leonard.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Sanchez.
Yes.
Surges.
Yes.
Weber.
Yes.
Winnicke.
Yes.
Okay, passes. Under executive, authorizing certain actions relative to the tax agent. This is a routine action. So moved by Mr. Hoshite, second by Ms. Allen. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, hearing none, clerk call the roll.
Allen.
Aye.
Braz.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Boscheit,
Yes.
Iqbal,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Sturgis,
Yes.
Weber,
Yes.
Winnicke. Yes.
Okay, that item will be added to the consent agenda next Tuesday morning. Next is placing an advisory referendum question on the next general election ballot, reducing the size of King County Board to cut costs. May I have a motion and a second? So moved by Dr. Iqbal, second by Mr. Weber. Dr. Iqbal, would you like to address that? If you'd rise, please.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I haven't been consistent.
Yeah, this question was addressed by legislative committee. We got some vote, but we didn't get the majority. I brought it up here to discuss it more because this is a question that I need to ask my bosses, the voters. What should we do next time when the board meets in next year after the election and we have to face the redistricting? It's a complex issue. It goes to the very essence of people's being here. So it's an existential kind of a question. But nonetheless, it's important to ask openly, particularly in this time when our politicians in Springfield are being arraigned and being questioned about corruption. So we ask ourselves, and we let the people judge what we are doing. Can we do better? Can we do with lesser amount? Can we save something for them? It's an advisory question. It's not binding. It will bring out more debate, more openness, and people will know what this board is doing. There are folks on this board who would not like this to be asked, and I understand that. But it's important that we ask it. It should be discussed.
Okay.
That's my question here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Iqbal. Other comments? Mr. Frost?
Yeah, I just want to be clear. You said it did not pass by a majority at legislative?
That's
Did
correct.
not?
That's
Yes,
correct.
it did
Yeah,
not.
I think it had a 3-4 vote.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Sturgis?
My understanding is, I have a simple motion to table this.
Okay, Mr. Sturgis makes a motion to table this resolution. Is there a second?
Yes.
Mr. Hanson seconds the motion. It's a motion to table, so no discussion. Clerk, call the roll.
Allen,
Aye.
Frost,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Boscheit,
Yes.
Iqbal,
No.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Sanchez,
No.
Sturgis,
Yes.
Weber,
No.
and Winnicke. Yes. Passes.
Okay, the motion is tabled. Finance and Budget, Mr. Hoshait, I understand that you'd like to present and move 15 items.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll move all 15.
Okay, so moved by Mr. Hoshait, second by Mr. Leonard. Mr. Hoshait.
Number 1 is an emergency purchase for a postage machine. 2 and 3 deal with grant agreements and grant acceptance. 4 is a contract for pest control services. 5 through 8 are contracts for the Mill Creek SSA. 9 is a software extension agreement with Tyler Technologies. 10 is expanding our GPS home monitoring service area. 11 is approving the MAP Kane County Community Health Assessments and Priorities Improvement Plan. 12 is a lease for sheriff's in-car camera systems. 13 is canceling the employee wellness biometric screening this year due to COVID. 14 is hiring a replacement person in the transportation department. And 15 is a monthly payment of bills.
Okay, any thoughts or comments? Mr. Weber?
Thank you, Chairman. On 13, is there funds that are connected to the biometric screening? Is there some kind of savings that we get from the insurance company when we do this? I don't know who would know that, but.
Okay, if you'd rise when you speak, who might be able to answer that question? Okay, Mr. Surgis.
Steve, in this particular case, it's just a net wash. We are going to offer, I don't want, if Sylvia's here, we're going to offer the savings as if we did the biometric screening, and that the cost of the screening itself in the COVID is not worth the risk. So,
Okay.
does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I just view this as some kind of a preventative care thing. Is it?
But we do the biometric screening each year. It gives us a focus as to where we might be able to better target and assist. I'm a diabetic. Everybody knows that. We want to know how many diabetics we have and what can we do to help them out. People with hypertension, but the screening right now is not something that we're in the middle of the COVID. Putting everybody in a gymnasium downstairs is probably not the best way to do it. So we found a way to just do it as a null to the budget and move it on till next year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions or comments? Ms. Allen?
Just a follow-up. Sorry, just a follow-up. If we go to our ordinary physician, those of us who have insurance or are contemplating insurance, if we go to our regular physician, can we ask them to do a similar screening, and would that be covered?
Deb, I'm not quite sure that that's how it works.
Okay.
The screening provides us with data that we can use internally to focus specific programs toward our employees in a way to help them out. Under the notion that a healthier staff is a more productive staff, what can we do to assist those who might not go to their doctor, those who might not be aware of an abnormality or irregular, something. So if you go to your doctor personally to do that, yay you. You should be doing it. But we were doing this as an additional benefit for our people, trying to incentivize them to go and have these screenings done. And then equally find a program that's available to help that target audience, or that census, if you will, with a betterment for them.
Okay,
So.
all right. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. Any from participants on the phone? Hearing none. Clerk, call the roll.
Allen. Aye. Roz.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Oshite.
Yes.
Iqbal.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Leonard. Martin.
Yes.
Sanchez.
Yes.
Surges. Weber.
Yes.
Winnicki. Yes. Okay, yes.
Okay, the motion passes. These 15 will be placed on the consent agenda. Judicial Public Safety, Bill Leonard, I believe that you'd like to present and move one item.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I have one item to move forward. This resolution encourages all local law enforcement agencies within the jurisdiction of Kane County to implement reforms to address equity and justice in policing.
Okay, so moved by Mr. Leonard. I believe that Dr. Iqbal, you'd like to second this, and then you have a friendly amendment to this that you'd like to discuss. So with your permission, Mr. Leonard, we'll go to Dr. Iqbal. I believe that's basically two things that you'd like to adjust.
Yes, I sent it over to Roger, if you can.
Yes,
You want to display it, Chairman?
yes, please. Thank you. Actually, the first one where you had it bigger.
Yeah, the first amendment goes to the title. The title was Kane County Board Support for Police and the Police Reforms. That's the amendment. And the second one is more grammatical or textual. We are taking the second where off and putting it in the first place. That's the only change. It reads better.
Okay. Are there any thoughts or comments? Thank you, Dr. Iqbal. Are there any thoughts or comments? Seeing none. Any from participants on the phone? Hearing none. Clerk, call the roll.
Allen.
Oh, excuse me. I am so sorry. Before I call for the vote, Mr. Leonard.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure, since we're amending it, should we vote on the
Oh,
amendment
I'm so
first?
sorry. That's absolutely right. Thank you. So this is, we have a motion to amend by Dr. Iqbal, perhaps second by Mr. Leonard. Thank you for that. So this will be a vote on whether the members of the executive committee support the amendment in those two parts. So is that okay with the author of the resolution and the amendments?
Yes.
Okay, Doctor? Okay. So clerk will call the roll on the amendment.
Allen,
We're voting on the amendment?
Yes.
Aye.
Braz,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Hoshite,
Yes.
Iqbal,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Surges, Weber,
Yes.
Winnicki.
Yes.
Okay, the amendment is adopted. Now it's been moved and seconded. Okay, Mr. Leonard, seconded by Dr. Iqbal. Any further discussion on this resolution as amended? Seeing none, hearing none, clerk call the roll on this resolution as amended to put on the consent agenda for Tuesday morning.
Allen,
Aye.
Braz,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Hoshite,
Yes.
Iqbal,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Surges, Weber,
Yes.
Winnicki.
Yes.
Okay, the motion as amended passes to the consent agenda for Tuesday morning. Public service, Doug Shefflow. Actually, Doug is away this morning. Who would want to move this in his absence? So moved by Mr. Surges, second by Ms. Allen. What it does is it authorizes the appointment of election judges through public service. Any comments or questions? Seeing none. Any from participants on the phone? Hearing none. Clerk, call the roll.
Allen,
Aye.
Braz,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Hoshite,
Yes.
Iqbal,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Surges, Weber,
Yes.
Winnicki.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. Riverboat Committee, John Hoshite, I believe that you'd like to present and move one item. Mr. Hoshite.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move the resolution which authorizes our internal funding from the riverboat for next year.
So moved by Mr. Hoshite, second by Mr. Leonard. Mr. Hoshite. And you've
We
described-
met as the committee, we made a recommendation as to the funding of internal projects. In doing so, we recognize a significant reduction in available funding, particularly this year because the boats were closed, or the boat was closed for quite a while and now is just open on a restricted basis. And so this budget recommendation takes into account that and also attempts to sustain the program longer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hoshite. Any comments or questions? Seeing none. Any from participants on the phone? Hearing none. The clerk will call the roll.
Aye.
Braz,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Hoshite,
Yes.
Iqbal, Kenyon,
Yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Surges, Weber,
Yes.
Winnicki.
Yes.
Passes. Transportation, Drew Frost, I believe that you'd like to present and move 4 items.
Yeah, we only have 4 this month. I'll move all 4.
Okay, so moved by Mr. Frost, second by Mr. Weber. Mr. Frost.
The first item approves an access point off Randall Road, 1,600 feet north of Route 72. This is as requested by the Village of West Dundee, and it was reviewed and recommended by KDOT to the board. Item 2 approves a Phase 1 engineering agreement with Crawford, Murphy, and Tilly in the amount of $657,154. This is for the Dauberman Road, Meredith Road realignment project near Canelan High School. Item 3 approves an $80,000 expenditure for King County to become a member of the Easy Pass system. This will make for efficient and expedient coordination of the Long Meadow Parkway tolling system in its construction. Item 4 approves a reimbursement of $60,000 to the Union Pacific Railroad. This is for a review of plans for the Bunker LaFox Roads bypass project. That's all I have.
Okay, any thoughts or comments? Mr. Surges, would you rise, please?
Drew, I apologize. I should have called you on this. On the Randall Road access at Route 72, if you're familiar with the area, that we put in an access to the west for the Park District complex that's there.
Okay.
Is this tying in to that one going to the east? Or is this, and you might not know this, and I apologize.
I believe this is a standalone entrance to develop that entire empty corner there.
That would be the northeast corner.
I believe so. I don't know if Steve Koffenberger might be on the line to answer that, but I believe that's the case. This is entirely new development, and it would have no interconnectivity with the other ones.
So will this, I'm so sorry. So on that stretch between Binney Road and 72, going to the east, there'll be 2 cut-ins for that. I'm just trying to figure out if it's going to line to the entrance to the Forest Preserve District and the Park District. Are those going to align, or are they going to miss? And it's going to be
If you look in the actual resolution, I believe it says it will align with an existing entrance. Whether or not that's the Park District, I don't know.
okay.
But I can find out for sure after the meeting.
Okay.
Okay, any other thoughts or comments?
Mr.
Oh, okay, Mr. Martin?
Anecdotally, I drive by that every Saturday. And I think it does connect with the Park District. But I think there's a stoplight there already. And I
You mean
think
connect across the street?
it's just, yeah, it's called Recreation Drive.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be, well, anyway, whatever it's going to be called, but you can confirm that obviously by the meeting, so you know.
In the resolution, it does mention Reservation Drive and alignment. And so the reason this is coming to the board is because Randall Road's a limited access freeway. And for any variation from that, we have to run it through the board.
My only, and the reason I'm asking is Mr. Kaios and I recently had a constituent asking for an additional cut closer to Huntley Road that was denied. And so I'm just making sure that if we're doing this, you know what I'm saying? I want to play fair. So
Yeah, it's always tough because staff is very stringent about handing out variances to their policies. In this case, it seemed to make sense because it was the only way that this fairly large development could move forward. And it was as requested by West Dundee. Else?
Okay, any other thoughts or comments? Seeing none, any from participants on the phone? Hearing none, clerk call the roll.
Allen,
Aye.
Froz,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Oshite,
Yes.
Iqbal,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Yes.
Weber,
Yes.
Winnicke. Passes.
Okay, the motion passes. Next, resolutions authorizing CARES Act administration matters and distribution as required. John Hoscheit, I believe that you'd like to present and move 5 items, but I think we need some flexibility in this area. This morning, I reviewed a couple of resolutions from last night that I know are important.
Right.
And so however you'd like to structure this so that it's best for consideration for the executive committee and also for the board on Tuesday morning.
Okay,
your
thank you,
prerogative.
Mr. Chairman. Number 1 is really a housekeeping matter, but it's a resolution that comes from the board directing the Kane County Office of Community Reinvestment to assist the committee and the state's attorney's office in establishing and administering our program. So I'll move that.
Okay, so moved by Mr. Hoscheit, second by Mr. Kenyon. Any thoughts or comments? Just one thought, and also it's a matter perhaps of housekeeping. I'm assuming that those responsibilities will not affect performance on current responsibilities.
That's correct. In establishing the state's attorney's office as the point for administering the program, we agreed that they would have the bulk of the responsibility, but the expertise of the community reinvestment staff is critical to help us in dealing with grant structuring because they do that for a living.
Okay. Any thoughts or comments? Seeing none, any from participants on the phone? Hearing none, clerk call the roll.
Allen,
Aye.
Braz,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Hoshait,
Yes.
Iqbal,
Yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Sturgis, Weber,
Yes.
Winnicki,
Okay, that will be moved onto consent agenda. Mr. Hoshait, would you like that on the consent agenda, or would you like it to be separate for consideration? What would be?
We
the
could put it on the
preference?
consent agenda. If any of the board members desire to take it off, we can do that at the meeting.
Understood. Okay, we'll do it.
All right, thank you.
And then the second?
The second is a resolution approving the intergovernmental agreement form, the application form that we're going to use. That is a form that has been developed through the committee with the assistance of the state's attorney's office, taking into account the forms used by other similar agencies. We're in the process. We have a template for what we desire to use. That is being further vetted with recommendations that would come back, but our desire is to have a final application ready so we can submit that. So I'd like this to be on the agenda. I'll move that we move that to the full board so we can have the final approval of that form, which will be distributed shortly.
So moved by Mr. Hoshait, second by Mr. Sanchez. Any thoughts or comments? Okay, just a clarification. I understand the copies of the draft that we have to date. Last time I saw that was adjusted was July 24th, reviewed it on July 26th, and then again last weekend. I want to make sure that I don't fall behind in the review of what we'll live with for a long time. Have there been any subsequent adjustments? Is the first question. Second question will be, and I think you've already stated that we're going to have a further, perfection of those documents. And then I would ask would that be by the Tuesday board meeting?
Yes, the commitment as it relates to using best efforts came from the state's attorney's office at our last meeting on Monday, saying that the hope was to have the final form available this Friday. If it isn't available Friday, we'll have to wait. But yes, if the thought would be there may be additional adjustments that would be incorporated into that form so it can be circulated in advance of our meeting.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is by August 7th, we'll have that, and then we'll have a weekend to consider it, and then we vote on Tuesday morning.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
So I
Any
would
other-
move that.
We've already moved it
Okay.
and seconded it. Mr. Sanchez was the second. Any further thoughts or comments? Hearing none, or seeing none, hearing none, clerk call the roll.
Allen,
Aye.
Braz,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Hoshait,
Yes.
Iqbal,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Sturgis, Weber,
Yes.
Winnicki,
Okay, the motion passes on to the consent agenda board meeting. Mr. Hoshait?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the next resolution I would like to move to the board would be one of the two resolutions that was handed out today before the meeting. This is the resolution entitled Authorizing Specific Allocation of Coronavirus Relief Funds. The committee met on Monday and made recommendations that we would like to put in place that creates the overall structure for allocation of the funds. Via prior resolution, we agreed conceptually with a 55-45 split, with 55% going to the county and 45% to local governmental entities. We went further through the process over the last couple of weeks and came up with a further breakdown, which carved out a few items from the gross amount of available funds. We carved out $8 million for a business grant program that we are in the process of establishing and working toward finalizing in our next couple of meetings. We set aside $5 million in a contingency fund to allow us to have additional funds to evaluate where they would be best placed after receiving all the applications. In theory, if we received more applications or requests for more funds in one area and we wanted to supplement this would give us the ability to do that. It would also provide some backup for unforeseen circumstances. In addition, we would set aside $600,000 for the cost of administration. With every grant program we administer, we are entitled to reimburse ourselves for staff costs associated with that, as well as the payment of outside consulting services to assist us in that process. After deducting those three line items, we get down to a $79,300,000 figure, and we've allocated that in the further breakdown, some to county, some to the county departments and offices, some to the municipalities. We set up $1.35 million for fire protection districts. We set up $1 million for forest preserve districts, park districts, and townships. We set aside a sum for the unincorporated areas, and we set aside $2 million for not-for-profits. And what we did is we funded those, the not-for-profits, the fire protection districts, and the local government share from the municipal side of the allocation. So this attachment to the resolution is a breakdown of the framework that gives us the ability, once we have an application ready, to now receive applications and then see if they fit within the funding requirements we've established. So I would propose that this resolution move forward.
Okay, so moved by Mr. Hoscheit, second by Ms. Wonicky. Any thoughts, comments? Dr. Iqbal.
Yeah, I'd like to know, there was a question about the population distribution. Has that been resolved?
The census question is one issue that is on our agenda weekly. We have not finally resolved that issue. The decision of the committee was to move forward with the 2019 figures from CMAP, I believe, and subject to being flexible enough to take into account what was referred to as the committee as an appeal. But if a specific governmental body had a concern about, one of the municipalities had a question about their specific census numbers, they would be able to address that to the committee, and we could consider that and adjust their allocation if it was deemed appropriate and justified.
So, so the second question would be, how soon would you be able to resolve that issue? And
Well, as soon as you are done counting people, we'll be able to do that. I'm just kidding. We're working, we meet weekly. We're trying to get over hurdles every week. The expectation is within the next few weeks, we'll be in a position to understand if in fact there are going to be any appeals, and then we can address that. The hope is the applicant, from a big picture perspective, once we finalize the applications go out. There's 2 weeks for the municipalities to respond. So hopefully within that time frame, we'll know if there's going to be any questions on the census, and we'll be nimble enough to address those then.
There is a reconciliation that was done in Mr. McMahon's office and also then independently checked through our county auditor, through Terry Huntz. If you would like to sit down with Terry, He did an excellent job of independently confirming numbers that were early labeled CMAP numbers that were actually those federal census numbers with several worksheets that when you cross-tabulate them, it comes out with specific numbers. So it has been independently verified. So those preliminary numbers are in place. And what the CAC meeting, I think, said is that there's one last shot where any municipality might be dissatisfied with the count. They can so-called appeal it, and we're all ears. We'll try to show what we're doing and listen to what they're saying. Is that correct?
That's
The CAC,
accurate. I know
not
the committee early on recognized that this is an exact science. The state, in allocating money to the county, used their own census figures. We don't have an exact number, but we're doing our best to get a fair number. And I think in terms of concerns, the Metro West Group has done a great job of trying to coordinate the municipalities. Almost everyone's on board. I think there may be a couple municipalities that may have questions, and that's why we have discussed this concept of giving them an opportunity to raise the concerns. I don't expect this to be a hang-up or a problem.
Okay. Just a clarification, it was not the state's allocation of the federal money. It was federal, straight federal. The state got 55%, we got 45%. Ours was 92.9 million. For our population allocated to the state was 113.5. One of the sources of confusion, and if someone had the time and talent to check the numbers, when the Illinois Department of Revenue's numbers that they distribute, the local government distributive fund, when those numbers were looked at, there's a difference of something like 15,797 fewer people in Kane County. And perhaps that doesn't affect us, but if you were to say the same kind of, it's about a 2 or 3% difference, all the other 97 counties that were done, they were done a different way. They were done a state allocation. And at least Kane County, that number is 2 to 3% lower. I hope that those other counties, excuse the French, haven't been shortchanged. But because the money came from the federal government, I believe it's best to use, and I believe that the consensus of the CAC committee has been best to use the numbers that came from the US Treasury. They've been independently verified. And so actually the state numbers became a confusion. It's clear if you use the US Treasury. And I think the most helpful thing that I've had is that, you sit down with Terry Hunt and he has it laid out well. Okay. Mr. Martin.
I have a point for my clarification. In the context of this discussion, CMAP was mentioned. Am I correct that what we're using is the 2019 census, federal census figures?
Yes.
Okay, just,
Yes.
that's what I had understood.
And those are identical to the CMAP numbers.
That's fine.
That's probably where
I
CMAP
just wanted to
got
use
there.
the same words that we were
Yes.
otherwise using. Okay, thank you.
And which I believe are the same numbers as Metro West. Is that right, Mr. Hoshai?
That's correct.
Right. So it's 3 of 4 possible calculations are from federal census numbers. So any other thoughts or comments? Seeing none, any from participants on the phone? Hearing none. This then will be titled, as it says on the resolution, authorizing specific allocation of coronavirus relief funds. We'll put it at number 3 in the lineup.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. And then any further comments or questions? Okay. Clerk, call the roll.
Allen,
Aye.
Froz,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Hoshait,
Yes.
Iqbal,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Surges, Weber,
Yes.
Winicki. Okay, passes.
All right,
This is Mr. Hoshait.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. The fourth resolution that I'd like to advance is the second resolution that was handed out this morning. It's entitled Authorizing Preliminary Approval of Costs Incurred by the County of Kane for Coronavirus Relief Funds. As we discussed previously, there's an allocation of funds to municipalities from whom we will be receiving applications. Likewise, the county has been working diligently to put together their request for funds. Our committee has been working to review those requests. Some of those requests, well, the total requests combined exceeded the amount of money that we have allocated to the county's portion. But the goal of the committee was to move something forward to this meeting to at least let the county know that a portion of those funds are going to be approved for distribution, subject to being vetted through the process that we have to vet to make sure the funds are eligible for reimbursement. But in this resolution then, we're taking a couple components of the requests that were set forth. The first component was an allocation for items that are on what we have as Exhibit A. These are non-payroll past expenditures that were identified as potentially eligible for reimbursement. These are items we've already paid out or are paying out from the county, and they total $1,079,336. So the committee, having reviewed those items, is recommending approval for disbursement of those funds. In addition, Mr. Onzik had presented to the committee a breakdown of what I'll call payroll-related expenditures that arguably fit within the Corona reimbursement criteria. The total amount of that request or that calculation was in excess of $25 million. There was some discussion, actually I had brought up perhaps reducing that sum by payroll expenditures that the sheriff had incurred for patrol in the unincorporated areas, because we have a separate fund that is available for expenditure for the unincorporated areas, and we would, in theory, cover that out of that fund instead of taking it out of the $25 million from the county's portion of the fund. We don't have a specific number for that, and so what the recommendation that I made was that we would, instead of providing $25 million, we would, at this point, provide $23 million to the county for the payroll, primarily payroll-related expenses, subject to further discussion and subject to making up that difference of $2 million from the unincorporated area share under the municipal allocation. So in addition, per Mr. Surgis's request, we did add one, what I'll call capital expenditure that was COVID related to the coroner's office. The coroner had made a request for $500,000 for the purchase of two vehicles that had a separation between the driver's compartment and the back of the vehicle, and in addition, some additional supplies for COVID-related purposes. There was a concern about getting the vehicle on time, because the theory is that we have to have the money invested by the end of this year. And the committees, after discussing it with the coroner, felt it appropriate that one vehicle would be best instead of two vehicles, given the limited resources that we have. So in order to allow for that vehicle to be ordered, that $190,000 figure was added into this resolution. Now, separate from this, we will have money left over to allocate, and we have a list that we're accepting presentations on. The sheriff has some additional items that we haven't covered specifically. Once we get that presentation done, then we'll come back and we'll prioritize those with a supplemental resolution. But sorry for the long-winded explanation, but that's how we got to this point. If this resolution is approved, then the county can submit the requested information to the state's attorney's office. And once that's approved through that process, the funds will be available to be put back. And Mr. Onzik then can address how the impact of that will have on our current year's budget and next year's budget to the extent it allows us to restore some of the funds.
Okay.
So
thank you,
with that,
Mr.
I'll move that resolution.
So moved by Mr. Hoshite, second by Mr. Surgis. Further questions or comments? Ms. Allen?
Have an approximate idea of how much we have left to disperse for lots of other capital requests?
Well, under the budget form that is here, the number for the county is 43,615,000. The numbers here, if you total them, are a rough 25 million plus or minus. So it would be the difference between the two, rough math, $18 million. I believe the requests that we have that are unallocated yet were in the $20 to $30 million range, but those would be the projects that you're talking about. The reason that the committee moved this forward now is because of the urgency for the county and Mr. Onzik to be able to have some knowledge as to what we're going to use the funds for. If we use them for capital projects, they can't help us with our budget deficiency this year. So if we address these were the easiest to identify to move forward, and that's why we move forward with this.
Ms. Allen?
The confusion for me was that I thought we'd already made an allocation for the health department. Was that coming out of a different bucket?
Oh, I'm sorry, that would actually be out of that fund as well. So that would be, so instead of having, was it 18 million left, it would be, there was $8 million, I believe, allocated there.
Maybe 10.
Right, but in that, that request, when I suggested that there may be 30 million or so in request and we had 18 million to fund, 8 million of that was, the health was included in that fund. So we're not, so that's a part of that 30 million in requests.
Any other thoughts or questions? Mr. Sanchez?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Somewhat of a minor point of Scrivener's error. In the last whereas, referring to the Kane County Coroner's Office, the vehicle says prior to December 31st, 2020, and it should read December 30th. It seems a small thing, but the difference between December 30th and 31st in this resolution is about $190,000. So I want to make sure we catch that.
All right, so yes, the motion that I will make will be this resolution with that correction being made.
Okay, so, so Gabby, do you have that? It's on resolution number 2. It is the whereas before the now be it resolved. So go to what will become number 4, but we've had it labeled number 2. So it's the last whereas, where it has December 31st, it's actually the 30th. Okay, thank you for making that note. Okay, further questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Seeing none, hearing none, just clarification. In the fourth, the fourth whereas, it refers to the 80% shall be made available for distributions through applications. Is that still a live concept, or was that moot because of its reimbursement of expenses?
The committee's recommendation is that that would still be part of the program. And again, subject to our moving promptly after the applications are done to see where we're at in terms of how the requests compare, the total amount of the requests compared to the available funds.
Okay, and then just a similar clarification to, although it's not in error, it's just an absence, as Mr. Sanchez, would there be any objection to putting the date in the third whereas King County Board established CARE Act allocation, the CAC committee? I believe that that was on July 2nd of this year. And the other, the federal government action was dated, the county was dated, and then the second county action. Is there any objection to putting in the date that that took place?
I'm not, do you have a, can you tell us the specific location again?
Yes, sorry. third whereas in the resolution that will become number 4. It says, whereas the Kane County Board established the CARES Act Allocation Committee, CAC, I would ask, is there any objection to locating that in time as the other ones have been located in time on July 2nd of 2020 to study options for the best applications of the CARES Act?
If that's the date, I have no objection to making that amendment.
Okay. Okay. So thank you, Gabby. Okay. Any other thoughts or comments? Seeing none, hearing none, clerk call the roll.
Allen,
Aye.
Frost,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
O'Shea,
Yes.
Iqbal,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Leonard, Martin,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Surges, Weber,
Yes.
Winnicki. Okay, passes.
Okay, motion passes, will be put on the consent agenda as number 4 resolution under CAC. Mr. Hoshea.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, at this point, I'd just like to digress for a second and thank for our staff for putting these documents together for us. Our committee has been meeting weekly. We've had minutes put together promptly. We've had resolutions that we've asked for to be drafted. You can see the ink is still drying on these because staff were working late hours yesterday to get a final draft together. So I just wanted to thank them for their participation and cooperation, as with the rest of my colleagues on the board, because ultimately the goal is to have unanimous consent for this program moving forward, and your input in the process have been helpful for us getting toward that goal. So the resolution we just passed really would take the place of item 4 that was on the agenda that was presented for this meeting today. I'm not sure there's any other formal resolutions that we have prepared at this point to move forward.
So at a later time, you and CAC might want to consider authorizing administration of CAC process and then resolution of appointment of consultant and project manager?
Yes, I believe those were placeholders. Part of that has been incorporated into some of the other resolutions.
Yes, but not entirely. But I understand placeholder, there's a lot of moving pieces. And all of us will do our best to accommodate. There was a, so is there any other action that you would like the?
Not that I'm aware of, unless the state's attorney has any requests or recommendations. Mr. Surges?
Just so I'm clear, 1, 2, and 4 were actionable. 3 and 5, we took no action on.
3, 4, and 5 are, let's see, Mr. Hoshait mentioned that what's called resolution number 2, or, let's see.
I think I can maybe provide the answers. 1 and 2, we approved. 3 and 4 were the separate resolutions that were presented today. On the original agenda, I don't think number 3 is necessary at this point because we've been moving forward with the resolution, the enabling resolution before. If we need to clarify or have something in more detail, we'll bring that back. Number 4, we dealt with in part by the new number 4 because it did authorize some expenditures for the county, but a portion of those expenditures that were referenced in that original title are those that we're going to consider with remaining funds available to the county. And then item 5, we're not in a position or there's not a need at this point to move forward with that resolution.
That I'm in sync. Thank you.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Any other pieces? Mr.
Nothing further. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
There was one follow-up item at whenever it fits into the workflow the best. At the Monday's August 3rd's CAC meeting, a request was made to receive, for board members to receive the responses to the RFP and then also the time marks of when the appointment of the consultant, that process, just the package, the response packages there were 2 candidates from what I understand. So I would just ask whenever that fits in, it's at the earliest convenience to have that distributed. Would that be
Fine,
okay?
yes, and just one other comment. We are scheduled to meet again on Monday at 2:30. The goals for this meeting, now that we have the infrastructure theoretically approved, is to establish the criteria for our business grant program that will include parameters for the types of grant, the amount of the grant, and the timing on that. So we'll be discussing that. Also, we may have some discussion about the not-for-profit grants, and if we're going to target those to specific types of not-for-profits, it was suggested that homeless shelters and food banks may be the priority this time, but that'll be an item of discussion. In addition, we may have some additional feedback on the census issue. We'll have the final application form that we'll approve. And so you can see we're trying to get the ball rolling here as best we can. And also then we'll get back to the county allocation and we'll look at the county projects to see if we can prioritize them as well. So everyone's welcome to attend if you can do it. I know it's a lot of meetings, but I think we're at a point now where we're beginning to be pretty productive. So thank you.
We'll also, again, with your desire and the CAC committee's desire, we'll also put aside a couple of placeholders for action that might come out of your Monday meeting for Tuesday voting, just to keep those things moving forward, just so that there's maximum flexibility.
Thank you.
There's no need for executive session. Any committee reports? Mr. Frost?
I just have one item. It's actually not my committee, I'm on it, but we have a minor issue related to the new building that I'd like to get some input and possibly consensus from the executive committee. Ms. Allen, if you'd like to handle this, I'd be happy to yield.
Sure. I think this is an appropriate forum. We would like some direction. When we started building the MUFCO, we were really lucky to have a contractor who was willing to work with us, who rubbed his hands together and said, it's April and it's not raining, we're going to start construction, while we were all waiting to try and get our financing lined up because the pandemic made the municipal bond market really shaky. And so if you remember, we went through the whole drill for private market funding, which turned out to be very successful. So in dealing with the pandemic and the timeline, we didn't do a groundbreaking, shovel in the dirt sort of celebration. And now here we are in the beginning of August. Drew attended a groundbreaking or a ribbon cutting for the Markland organization, which opened a new school, and said that they were able to follow guidelines safely, and it went off successfully. I put in a call to the health department to see if there were any guidelines they wanted us to follow. And then I approached the chairman about doing our celebration in honor of the new building. And at the time that I asked, it was like 90 degrees and humid and miserable. And so we suggested putting this into September. Now, some of the committee would like to do it next Tuesday after the county board meeting because we're having perfect weather. I did not move forward, so I'm asking if we could do our celebration in September after the board meeting, just to have a little more time to prepare. So the direction that Drew and I are asking is, does the committee prefer August, next Tuesday, or September the 8th? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Oh, no, we don't take,
No?
let's not take votes on when we're going to schedule
Okay.
a party.
Could I have some direction from the executive committee about doing this? And Drew, did you want to say something further?
Yeah, I'd just like to say this would be a simple 45-minute ceremony. We have a spot set up. It'd be over and done very quickly. You know, the building is moving along great. That's the good news. And by September, mid-September, we're going to have the roof on and the windows in it. So the groundbreaking starts to become irrelevant. The building team that meets weekly would like to get this over and done, get it done, and get it done before the building's too far along. So that's what I'm recommending.
Okay. Would there be any objection to just scheduling it after the board meeting in September? Any objection?
I object to that.
I understand you'd like it next Tuesday. Any from folks on the phone?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Caius?
Yes, thank you. I prefer to have it done the sooner the better. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your input. Any other thoughts, comments?
I just think that, like everything else, something that should be simple and fun becomes political and controversial. I think this has political motivations.
Okay, Miss Allen, or does that take care of it?
Yes.
Does it,
Well,
okay, good.
Would everyone please put on their calendar that we'll plan to go from our board meeting over to celebrate the new building on September 8th? Thank you.
In September, right. Okay, any other committee reports? Seeing none, any from anybody on the phone? Hearing none, may I have a motion to adjourn? So moved by Mr. Kenyon, second by Mr. Leonard. Clerk, call the roll.
Allen.
Aye.
Franz.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Hoshait. Yes. Iqbal.
Yes.
Kenyon. Leonard.
Yes.
Yes.
Sanchez.
Yes.
Surges. Weber.
Yes.
Mickey. Yes. Okay, we're adjourned.